Yes, health is wealth. Welcome to Healthy Living. Are you blessed with a meal? Today we're taking a look at a very, very critical topic: defeating diabetes. And with me again on this very critical topic is Reverend Tony Akinyemi. Reverend, you're welcome to the program.
My pleasure to be here again. Thank you for always having me.
Yes, you're always looking good.
Oh wow, thank you.
I think your tailor is a very good fashionista.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm blushing now. And kudos to my tailor.
Okay. So now we are talking on defeating diabetes.
Right.
Diabetes has actually sent so many people to hell.
Yeah.
First of all, what is the cause of diabetes? Is it only sugar? Because we keep hearing stop eating sugar, anything that involves sugar, stop it. What is the cause of diabetes?
Essentially, diabetes is a situation where either, number one, an individual is unable to produce insulin to help sugar management. I will explain the role of insulin in sugar management. There is a sugar management mechanism in our body that helps us to regulate the amount of sugar that will be in our blood per time. If there's a small gland called the pancreas, and there's a specialized portion of the pancreas that has what we call the beta cells, beta, alpha, beta, gamma, what have you, beta cells. It's called the islet of Langerhans. That is the portion of the pancreas that secretes this hormone called insulin. And it is that insulin that helps sugar to exit from the bloodstream and enter into the cells, because the cells are where the sugar is actually needed. So the sugar must exit from the blood and enter into the cells. And it is insulin that will open the door of the cell to allow the sugar to go in. So if a person's pancreas is not producing insulin at all, or it is producing insulin but is not producing enough of insulin, that can lead to excess sugar remaining in the blood, not exiting the blood, just circulating around and then causing damage. That could be one cause of diabetes. That is, insulin production is affected. The second scenario that can create diabetes also is not related to insulin production, but related to insulin utilization. Okay, let's assume that the individual is able to produce enough insulin, sufficient insulin, but the insulin is attempting to open the cells for sugar to enter, but the cells are not responding to the insulin. We call that insulin resistance or insulin insensitivity. In other words, the person is not sensitive to the promptings. It's like somebody is knocking and nobody is answering. Nobody is opening the door. So if a person's cell begins to resist the action of insulin, then sugar will not be able to leave the blood and enter the cells. So the sugar keeps circulating around the blood. So diabetes essentially is high blood sugar or high blood glucose. And the two scenarios I've described are what can cause that high blood sugar. It is not about you eating the carbohydrate or the sugar. It's about, are you able to manage it? Are you able to absorb the sugar into your cells? Because the sugar is supposed to go into the cells, and there's a factory within the cell that is called the mitochondria, where the glucose that has entered into the cell is processed as in a refinery to produce an end product. That end product is called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP for short. That ATP is the final fuel, like the petrol that will now run the generator, the engine. That's the one that actually gives us energy. You use ATP for energy and for all. But before glucose can become ATP, it goes through the refinery in the mitochondria. So the sugar must enter into the cell, and then the cell, through its mitochondria, will convert it to ATP, and then the ATP will now be utilized for whatever purpose the body needs it for. So essentially, if you eat carbohydrate, it is digested, broken down to glucose. The glucose will penetrate through the wall of the digestive tract, the small intestine in particular, and then it will enter into the bloodstream. And the bloodstream now circulates the sugar around the body. So every cell begins to take their own sugar. Now, the process of taking their sugar from the blood into the cell, when that process is impaired, either because there is no insulin to help, or the cell is resisting the action of insulin, then the person becomes diabetic. Now, that's why there are different types of diabetes. If a person's pancreas is not able to produce insulin, that's called type 1 diabetes. In other words, that person has to take insulin externally through injection. That person becomes dependent on insulin from the outside of his body or her body. So that's called insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus, IDDM. That's type 1. You have to take that insulin every day because the body can't produce it. It can usually start in childhood. That's why they call it juvenile onset diabetes mellitus. We will look at the mechanism that causes that to happen, where the pancreas is impacted and is no longer able to produce insulin. For those who are producing insulin, but they are not making enough of it, there's a way you can also use diet and lifestyle to boost insulin production, to help them to be able to have sufficient. For those who are producing sufficient insulin, but the cells are resistant to the insulin, there are also ways you can sharpen insulin sensitivity to tell the cells, hey, listen to insulin, it's knocking, open the door, So you can actually, reprogram the body to start responding to insulin and improve the response of the cells to the action of insulin to the insulin receptors on the cells. And that way you can address diabetes. So those are the different types of diabetes. We have type 1, we have type 2, and there are many others, like you have gestational diabetes. When a woman gets pregnant, sometimes the hormonal changes that take place in her body can make blood sugar to start going up. And that is pregnancy-induced elevated blood sugar. That's called gestational diabetes. Then there's another one that is called cerebral diabetes, that is caused by a type of glucose in the brain that is called cerebrose. The glucose that the brain uses is called cerebrose. And when that brain glucose begins to leach and the person begins to urinate cerebrose, that's a kind of diabetes that affects the cerebrose in the brain. And then there are those who are borderline diabetes. It's called impaired glucose tolerance or pre-diabetes. They're not fully diabetic, but they are inching close to it. That's pre-diabetic situation. So there are different types of diabetes. So when a person is diabetic, you have to situate it. You have to know which type, what is occasioning it, and that helps you to come up with a plan to mitigate it. Yeah.
So now, there are some cases where the person suffering from diabetes is already deteriorating.
Right.
So how can one be revived in such a case?
Now, diabetes, if not properly attended to, of course, will lead to deterioration, like you have identified, or degeneration. That's why diabetes is one of those diseases that are referred to as chronic degenerative diseases. Diseases that start and then begin to go downhill. Makes the person to keep going downhill gradually. It could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, it could be 30 years. But gradually the person keeps wasting away and wasting away and wasting away until they get to the end. When it becomes so critical, the person is not even able to utilize their food properly anymore. They start emaciating, they start shrinking, they start losing weight, and everything begins to fall apart before they reach the point of no return. Now, the most important thing is to understand that diabetes is essentially a metabolic disease. It's a disease of the dining table and the kitchen. The good news is that 95% of diabetes cases is caused by diet and lifestyle. 95%. And that means that if we get it right in our kitchen, our dining table, our eating habits, our lifestyle, we can prevent diabetes on the one hand, and for those who are already diabetic, they can reverse it for the most part. That's why my daughter and I put a book together. We call it Defeating Diabetes. And we have outlined there a 10-pronged strategy on how to prevent and reverse diabetes. My daughter, by the way, is a medical doctor. I am a nutritionist, so we collaborated together, to put that book together. And so we're trying to educate the public to let them know that, see, there are doable things that you can do by yourself, for yourself. You don't have to be a doctor, a pharmacist, or a nurse, or a nutritionist. A human being, just a human being with native intelligence, that's all you need. You can take charge and take control. But you have to know, you have to be informed, because to be uninformed is to be deformed.
Now, you said we need to take it right from our kitchen.
That's right.
So, how do we do that?
We always tell people that you can make your kitchen the best hospital in the world. The best hospital where you can be treated is your kitchen. And we advise people that when you want to prepare food and meals for your family, from the garden or from the farm, let the produce come straight from the farm to your kitchen. Do not allow it to pass through the factory. That's the first thing. So eat food from God's plant, not from a manufacturing plant. Because when it goes through the processing in the factory, a number of things will have happened. Transformations, changes, denaturing, devitalization, and sometimes additives are even added that will compound the problem. But when you take it the way God made it and bring it to your kitchen, no alteration, no denaturing, no devitalization, and then your own cooking process, you also are on top of that, and you know how to prepare your meals in order not to denature them, then you are eating medicine, as it were, what God provided, because your food is your real medicine.
All right.
All right.
Your food is your real medicine. All right, we take a break now, and when we come back, we continue.
Hi, Tony Akinyemi is my name, and I've written about 20 books to date. More are in the offing. Out of the 20 published books, to my credit, 6 of them are on healthy living. And I want to recommend these resources to you, to access them either digitally online or to get your hard copies. For digital access, you can visit amazon.com or familabooks.com. And for physical copies, you can visit the Shepherd stores at 18 Shogunle Street, Abule Onigbagbo off Mobolaji Bankantoni Way, between Eko Hospital and Sheraton Hotel Ikeja, to obtain your copy. You can also contact the email address on the screen or the telephone number, or send a WhatsApp message, and you'll be guided as to where to get any of the copies. God bless you as you access these resources. They will inform you, and the information will help to transform your health and that of your family, as well as that of the people in your sphere of influence. God bless you, and thank you.
All right, good to know that you're still there, still on the program Health in Living, and we are talking about defeating diabetes. And before that break, Reverend said that we need to put it right in our kitchen. Make sure that you eat those kind of food that are from the farm, not those ones that are already passed through the factory. So, sir, what are the way forward for living a life without having these ailments?
First of all, those who are born into a bloodline or the family line where there are diabetes patients, historically, maybe grandparents, parents, you see, this thing runs through the family. Those people in particular need to be very, very careful in watching their diet and lifestyle. Many people tell me, oh, this thing is hereditary. I inherited it from my parents. My parents inherited it from their own parents. While there may be some element of truth in that, it is not the whole truth. Like I said, 95% of the time is diet and lifestyle. Maybe 5% genetics. So you cannot really blame your genes or hereditary factors as being the main cause of your diagnosis of diabetes. That's the first thing that we need to correct in our mindset. Because some people just throw up their hand. It's not my fault. It's my parents. It's my parents' fault. It's in the bloodline. I inherited it. That is not absolutely true. You can do something. Even if you inherited the genes that predispose you to developing diabetes, you can keep those genes dormant through your diet and lifestyle. Let me give you a little illustration. Many people are familiar with beans, dry beans, raw beans. You can plant it and it will germinate and grow. If you have dry beans and you keep it in a plastic bowl and cover it tightly, maybe put it on your kitchen shelf or put it in your freezer for 6 months, how will the beans be like? It will remain the same. It won't germinate. It won't grow. It won't produce new pods of beans. It will just be there. Take that same beans that has been sitting on the shelf for 3 months, that didn't germinate, didn't grow. Take 2 pieces out of it. Go to your backyard. Dig the ground. Cover it with sand, with earth, and begin to water it. In 1 week's time, what happens? It will germinate, come out of the soil. And if you leave it sufficient long enough, it will produce new pods of beans. What has happened to the same beans that was behaving well on the shelf? Now it has changed its characteristics. It has changed its behavior. It has changed its color. What informed the change in behavior was the environment you put it in. When it is in the environment of that plastic bowl, the environment is not conducive for it to germinate, so it stays dormant. When you change it to the soil becomes conducive. Oh, this is what I've been looking for. The right humidity, the right temperature, the right this, the right that, and then it starts producing fruit. It's the same thing. The genes that you inherited from your parents, they can be inside your body. But if you make your body not conducive, it will remain like that. It will not germinate. It is when you start putting the wrong things and create a conducive environment for the genes, that's when there will be an expression of that negative genes for the disease, whether diabetes or something else. So the first thing I tell people is take control of the terrain of your body. The right temperature, the right hormonal profile, the right pH, the right oxygenation, make sure there is no toxicity. Everything in your body environment makes it hostile for disease to develop, makes it conducive for health and non-conducive for disease. That is it. Now, when it comes to food, diabetics in particular need to be very careful with the type of carbohydrates that they consume. Carbohydrates, I would divide them into 2 simple ones. We have simple carbohydrates and we have complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are those types that can easily rush into your blood when you eat it, because there is nothing to slow down their absorption into your bloodstream. So it just rushes in and you have a sugar spike. Okay, for example, if you take a bottle of soft drinks, you have about 8 to 11 cubes of sugar inside, depending on the type you are taking. And within 30 minutes, all the 8 cubes have entered your blood. So you see your sugar goes up sharp. And the moment your body senses that, your body says, hey, there's flood, we need to do something. And then the body mobilizes and the body starts pumping out insulin from the pancreas. Do a mop-up operation. Mop it up. It's too much. In order to bring it down to normal level. So you put your body into fire brigade mode. Okay? Maybe in the evening you drank another one. Your body says, hey, there's too much sugar here and there. And you keep stimulating your body into fire brigade mode all the time. By the time you are 40, you will have exhausted your body. So by the time the next rise in sugar comes, your body has lost its ability, its capacity to respond, because you have worn it out. But if you had been eating complex carbohydrates, which is very high in fiber, if you eat yam, for example, you eat plantain, and you eat food that is very high in fiber, They contain carbohydrate, but they also have a type of carbohydrate which is called fiber or roughage, which the human body cannot digest. We don't have the enzyme to digest it. So it serves like sponge. Okay? And it slows down the rate at which sugar goes up. It makes the sugar to go into your blood gradually. Gradually. So there is no spike and there is no fire brigade situation. So your body takes it one step at a time and there is no emergency situation. That way, your entire sugar management mechanism can be maintained for 80 years, 90 years without going haywire.
Wow.
Because you never exhausted it. But when you keep challenging it and challenging it with all kinds of emergency situations, you wear it out too soon. That is where taking all those simple sugars come in. All right. So that is one aspect of it. The other side of it is to also sharpen the body's ability to respond to insulin, which I call insulin sensitivity or dealing with insulin resistance. Now, there are certain foods we eat that will make our cells more sensitive to insulin. And I'll give an example. Cinnamon is a spice. Actually, it's the bark of a tree. They just peel the bark of the tree, dry it, and grind it into powder. So it's like curry powder. It's brownish in nature. You can use it to spice your meals. When you're cooking your beans, you put maybe a teaspoonful of cinnamon into it. You're cooking your soup, you add cinnamon. You are making your smoothie, you add cinnamon. You can even make cinnamon into tea, cinnamon tea. Just take a teaspoonful into your teacup, add hot water, and maybe honey to sweeten, or any other acceptable sweetener apart from sugar. Okay, and you make it into tea and you drink like tea. It helps to sharpen your insulin sensitivity. So your body is able to absorb sugar into the cells much more. Of course, there are 4 different types of cinnamon. The one that I recommend the most is called Ceylon cinnamon, Ceylon, because it has a substance called coumadin that is inside, which is the lowest concentration is in Ceylon cinnamon. The other ones, the coumadin content is rather too high. And if you take it for too long, it can start having an effect on the liver. So the best one is the Ceylon cinnamon. You can take it for life, no problem. Just make it into your tea, make it into your spice, add it to and that's it. And that helps to sharpen your insulin sensitivity. For those who are already diabetic, I would suggest that they take their breakfast and make their breakfast essentially a ketogenic breakfast. What do I mean by that? In other words, the breakfast should be rich in healthy fats. They should use fat as a source of energy rather than glucose. Because the body can use glucose for energy. The body can also use fat for energy. When you use glucose, the body, takes it in straight and utilizes it. When you use fat, the body converts it into what we call ketones. Ketones. And ketones can be a substitute. So ketones don't require insulin for you to utilize them. So if your body is having struggling to use sugar because of insulin problem, then switch to ketones. So you make a smoothie which I call cocoa keto smoothie.
Wow.
In other words, you have avocado pear, you have coconut oil. Those are healthy fats. Okay? And then you don't put things like banana and what have you. You just add a little cinnamon. You can use coconut milk and you blend everything. You can add some vegetables, some lettuce, some ugu, like that. You blend everything together into a smoothie. Take that as your breakfast. So you have almost zero sugar inside that breakfast, but you have a lot of healthy fats. Again, it's not all fats that are healthy. Okay, margarine is not healthy, for example. So you take healthy fats for breakfast. In the afternoon, you eat a big bowl of vegetable salad to give you a lot of fiber. Then you eat very small cooked food. And you eat low glycemic food. That is food that is low in sugar, even though they are carbohydrates, but the sugar content is not as high to give you a spike. I call low glycemic. You eat such food. So you eat the salad, vegetable salad, not fruit salad. And then for lunch, you eat your vegetable salad and then you eat your cooked food. If you are eating swallow, it shouldn't be bigger than your fist, like this. And you eat it with a lot of vegetable as well, cooked vegetable this time. But the raw vegetable must be there first. And then you eat it before lunch. Yeah, breakfast should be entirely raw. The smoothie that I mentioned. Then lunch, your vegetable salad, and then your little cooked food. Supper, if you are obese or overweight, that can also increase your insulin resistance. You need to lose the weight. In order to lose the weight, if you're obese or overweight, you make supper a big bowl of vegetable salad with no cooked food. So you limit your cooked food to lunch only until you attain your ideal weight. Then you can change your supper to also a big bowl of salad and a little cooked food. So you eat cooked food twice a day when you have attained your ideal weight. Okay, during lunch and during supper. For those who have already lost weight, you want to shore up the weight, boost it up a bit, then you can get protein powder. There are certain protein powders like pea protein, living protein, hemp protein, so on and so forth. And you can add the protein to your smoothie in the morning to boost your muscle so that you can develop more muscle and gain a little bit more weight. Yeah, that's the way to balance everything depending on the individual and the type of diabetes and at what stage in the progression the person is. But essentially what I have laid out is what will help the diabetic patient.
Okay, now talking about the cooked food and the handful of swallow.
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of swallow do they take? Is it gari or semo?
Yeah, talking about semo, it has passed through the factory. So, I said the other time, whatever goes through the factory, don't touch it. Number two, I will also advise against wheat. I see many people saying, diabetics should take wheat meal. I don't subscribe to that for various reasons, maybe beyond the scope of our conversation today. But take it from me that if you're diabetic, in fact, everybody, even if you're not diabetic, I stay away from wheat meal.
No.
Yeah, I suggest oatmeal instead. And then they can have cabbage fufu. You can use cabbage to make fufu, actually. They can have aubergine amala, garden egg. That purple garden egg that is long and big, that's called aubergine. You can actually cut it into pieces and boil it, make it tender, drain the water away, and then you put the cooked aubergine or garden egg into your blender and blend it smooth. Then you pour it into your cooking pot and just add a tablespoonful of psyllium husk. Psyllium husk is just a fiber. It's a binder. And then you turn it on fire for 2-3 minutes. It will come together like Yoruba's amala. And then you can eat it with any kind. It's low glycemic food. Okay, so aubergine amala, cabbage fufu. You can also mix 3 types of flour and make swallow. You can take 1 tablespoonful of psyllium husk plus 2 tablespoonful of almond flour plus 2 tablespoonful of coconut flour. That's 5 tablespoonful. And you mix it in that ratio, 2-1. The psyllium husk is 1 tablespoonful. The almond flour, the coconut flour, 2 tablespoonful. And then you put hot water, just like you put wheat inside water and turn it. You turn it into swallow. Low glycemic. Very good for those who are diabetic.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Giving answer to this wonderful topic. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Reverend. We have come to the end of the program, Healthy Living, and my guest has been Reverend Tony Akinyemi. Yes, we've been talking about defeating diabetes. Don't forget to call us, send us your messages, your questions regarding to this particular topic. And the number to call is 081-88-11-112 or 08039-534813. I am blessed for me to do it again.